This week on Head to Head, the mysteries of the Force, and we're back on video.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And as we mentioned, we are back on video. How's it feel, man?
It's weird.
Is it?
It is weird. It's been a long time, so being back actually in front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, and it should be noted that we have done, like YouTube videos and stuff like that where we just had the thumbnail basically, over our audio podcast. So this is a little strange for us, everybody. But look, Abso Pure Water. Remember how I always used to joke on the audio ones that we should actually get like some sort of a product sponsorship or whatever? It's ready for the Cantina, everybody. All right. Well, as you know, we actually saw The Empire Strikes Back with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Now, I had seen A New Hope.
Right.
Remember, you had just gotten in your car accident.
Right.
I saw A New Hope. I came back. I told everybody how really cool it was. And, of course, it made you feel bad. But now you finally got to see the Detroit Symphony Orchestra basically performing the music while the movie was actually playing. So what'd you think? It
was awesome. I mean, it was a pretty packed house. First, when I walked in, I was surprised to actually see like people in full like stormtrooper, like actual movie replica costumes.
Yeah, no, that was different. I don't actually remember that many because there was a lot.
Yeah, it was like a couple stormtroopers there, and then I remember at intermission there was a guy dressed up as Darth Maul out there, and he was pretty accurate with his costume, so that was really cool. But
yeah, the accuracy was really cool too. Like I remember. I had to take a picture because you know how I love the snowtroopers.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an actual snowtrooper there, which I thought was just amazing.
And the guy was another TIE fighter pilot was there,
yeah.
Too. Yep. So that was really cool. And then everybody was just really cool. Everybody was just looking forward to having a really good time. Once we got in and got seated, I could see the orchestra warming up. And then, of course, you see the screen. So I'm just really like on pins and needles to see how they're actually going to play along to the whole movie, because I keep thinking like, man, like there's so much music in this thing that I didn't even really think about. So like one of my favorite scenes was the snowspeeder scene when they were on Hoth. And
oh yeah, right.
Like that whole music, and I was just like,
yeah, that
I
was
didn't
one
even know
of
that
the
thing
things,
was that long.
I know. And that's one of the things that I always like. There's certain things that you expect, the Imperial March,
right,
Han and Leia's love theme, stuff like that. But then there's other, I guess, more incidental music,
right,
that you really don't think about, and like how much it really amplifies and just enhances the entire scene of the movie.
Yeah.
And with this concert, you were able to really see that, I think, for, the first time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things, too, was that the difference in the way they played the first half versus, because I didn't even think there was going to be an intermission. I didn't even think about that. But
oh, yeah, I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
There's an intermission.
Yeah, so when they came back from intermission, I don't know if you could tell, but to me, like, they really locked into the movie at that point, because at that point, you really couldn't tell that it was coming from the orchestra. It almost sounded like it was coming from the actual movie.
I felt the same way, where it was, you forget that, you actually have a live orchestra playing this stuff. I mean, you start to really get into the movie. I mean, about the only thing that I will say that was different about the New Hope performance, it would be really my only, if I had any mild complaints, the dialogue was a little bit quieter on this than it was during the New Hope.
Yeah, I was
like, the mix was a little. Yeah. That was about the only thing, was that, I mean, you got used to it after a while, but the dialogue was a little bit drowned out, especially in certain scenes.
Right, where you really wanted to hear the dialogue.
Yeah,
almost.
And it wasn't like that in A New Hope.
Okay.
The mix was spot on with that one.
Okay.
But I mean, it didn't ruin anything, certainly, but.
Definitely. And I'm just watching like the conductor, because he's got the laptop there, and you're watching like the meter go by. Yeah. And you're just like, he's trying to like keep up with everything. And I'm just like, man, he really has to hit this stuff.
It amazes me how they time that.
Man, it's crazy.
I mean, because when you really stop and think about, you know, they have to hit all these cues. They got to play it exact. I mean, I can only imagine.
Like if you're off just a little bit,
a little bit, yeah.
It throws the whole thing off, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and as usual, no mistakes. You know, everything was cool. Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure there's probably performers going,
yeah.
But I was absolutely blown away by, you know, just how, I mean, it, like you said, I think the biggest compliment that I can pay the DSO is that you really honestly didn't, it's like you forgot that you were
actually
seeing a concert.
Right.
I mean, you just thought that it was the soundtrack of the movie.
Yeah, like they just had the music just play loudly or something. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those performers, man, are just absolutely phenomenal. The people there were cool.
Mm-hmm.
In my row, I had this couple. They were sitting next to me, and the gentleman's name is Joe. He didn't give me his last name, but you know, I told him about the podcast, so hopefully he's watching. But he and his wife are actually friends with one of the French horn players who apparently has played with John Williams on some of the Star Wars films. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty wild.
So he was like, yeah, the guy over there in the French horn. I'm like, oh, okay, well, he looks old enough to have played, you know, in those films. But yeah, it was really cool. Like I said, I just had a real blast. I hope they do Return of the Jedi, though.
I would think that they would, and it's probably going to be around, you know, this time next year, because it was this time last year. It was the end of September that they did A New Hope, and then it was the end of September when they did Empire Strikes Back. So I can only hope, no pun intended,
no pun intended,
that, you know, they actually go through and do Return of the Jedi. I think they will. I mean, it's funny because I ended up talking to the lady who was taking tickets for like 45 minutes. Because, you know, I got there early or whatever. We started a conversation. We were just talking about, you know, all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I reminded her that they did A New Hope last year. So I said, yeah, I'm really hoping that they do, you know, Return of the Jedi next year and everything. Because that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I hope they have the choir, because for my favorite, you know, song in the, my favorite part of the score in the Return of the Jedi series. So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
If they have the choir there, that'd be awesome.
Well, and I imagine they're going to have anything there that
it's necessary.
Would need to be there. Yeah, because, I mean, that was one of the things, too, is the authenticity of the instrumentation, of, like, every little thing. You know, I thought, once again, I hate to overuse the phrase, but it was just spot on.
Yeah.
You know, I can only imagine how much rehearsal time, and what I would really love to do is for us to be able to set up an interview with either the conductors, some of the musicians, you know, and actually do an interview for this podcast about
definitely some of the fans,
preparation, yeah, right, even some of the fans or something like that, and really just besides us talking about our experience, you know, I mean, I am going to include some pictures, you know, in our show notes for the audio podcast, and you know, if they're not up on our Instagram, they should be. Because I think I was actually taking pictures and posting them as I was doing it. But, you know, you could check out our Instagram at head-to-head-SW, and, you know, you can see a lot of the pictures that we took of the event.
Yep. Definitely.
So I would highly recommend, if you guys are in the Detroit area and you've never seen the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, definitely go check these guys out.
Absolutely. They're actually doing some other cool shows like Harry Potter. So if any Harry Potter fans out there, they're doing Harry Potter. And then I think in December, they're doing Home Alone, the music to Home Alone. So that would be awesome, too. So definitely, you know, go check them out.
Yeah, and I mean, besides that, they'll do, you know, like they've done the music of Queen, Led Zeppelin, and all these other guys. And they actually bring in, like, a full band.
Wow.
You know, like a rock band and stuff.
Sweet.
And it almost becomes like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra kind of thing. Except, you know, instead of with the smaller orchestra, it's like the full Detroit Symphony Orchestra, you know, 100-plus piece or whatever. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then, of course, they have, you know, some really cool classical, more traditional performances as well. So, definitely check it out.
All right. Well, let's crack open these apps viewers.
Get these drinks. Let's go to the Cantina. All right.
So,
what do we got first?
First, Kevin Feige has been slated to develop a new Star Wars movie. What are your thoughts?
It's funny because I'm really curious on what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Because I'm one of these guys that, first of all, of course, I'm excited about it because he's the guy that's done, all the Marvel movies and stuff like that. And so for him to actually enter the Star Wars universe is just something that would be incredible.
Huge, definitely.
And I mean, that part's huge. Yeah. But just because you have this really cool name and all this other stuff, what's it going to be about? What's it going to explore? Mm-hmm. That's really where my excitement
starts to have
starts to, either get like really, really insane or just kind of like, okay, I'm curious.
Right.
I'm either excited or I'm curious.
Yeah. Now, for me, I'm definitely curious, of course, of what he's going to develop. Partially, I'm guessing that he's going to assist Rian Johnson with his films. If
Rian Johnson's films are even going to be made. I mean, there's a lot of questions at this point that he might not even do his trilogy. And quite honestly, if I were Rian Johnson, why would you even want to go back? After what happened with The Last Jedi, why would you even want to go through that again?
Like Vader, you ain't got to redeem yourself.
Well, there is that. But, the Knives Out movie that's coming out pretty soon has got a lot of buzz.
Yep.
Virtually critics, fans, anybody that's seen it on the festival circuit has said it's amazing.
Right.
Why would you not want to just continue that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, I think this would be better for him simply because it's a brand new story that he can tell. Like we've always said this before. It's something that he can tell. It's not a part of a saga that's already been established, so to speak. It's something that's fresh and brand new, and that's kind of what he does. And so if we can get something like that going, maybe in a certain time period or something brand new, like I said, it could be a time period we're familiar with or something that's completely brand new. But I think with Kevin Feige kind of assisting him with that can ensure that it's like, okay, you know what? This is going to be good. Or it could be something like Feige might develop the story and then Rian Johnson executes it. So now all he has to do is just execute the story as opposed to just
but it sounds to me like this is going to be Kevin Feige's story. Like this isn't anything to do with Rian Johnson at all. That this is going to be, completely his.
And which would be weird because, you got so much stuff going on right now. I mean, unless it's the Cassian Andor series or something. That's the only thing we haven't heard anything about.
Well, I mean, they could squeeze something else in. I mean, look, you got television. There's rumors now of a Darth Vader series that they actually have James Earl Jones right now signed almost for it.
Really?
I mean, they better hurry up.
Yeah.
You better get this guy to say like every phrase, every word, the entire alphabet. He's getting up there. That's all I'm saying.
Right. We never know.
Yeah, you never know. And so, then of course they're talking about Hayden Christensen maybe coming back. So I mean, you could develop endless series on Disney Plus, but I mean, as far as a movie goes, though.
Well, yeah, a movie. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like because you already have Benioff and Weiss, you have their whole series,
right?
And then theoretically, now unless you move Rian Johnson out of the way and just have Kevin Feige, then
that's why I'm wondering if he's even really going to do anything.
Then yeah, that's a possibility. But if Rian Johnson's still doing his, then you got to wonder, like, okay, because at one point Bob Iger said they're slowing down.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, okay, well, what are you bringing Kevin Feige from?
Well, I think it's a slowdown as far as not releasing one movie a year, but it does almost seem like they're going every couple of years now.
Yeah.
And I think what it is that because you have the TV series, because you have all this stuff, I think that's the reason why. It seems like Star Wars is jam-packed again when in the movie aspect of it, it really isn't. You have a movie every couple of years. It's not like a movie every year like it was.
Well, yeah, and I think people will still be able to get their Star Wars fix through Disney Plus.
I think honestly that Disney Plus is going to end up being pretty much the future of Star Wars, and we're going to get most of our Star Wars content.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
And I'd rather have that, to be honest, because, instead of a 2-hour movie, now you can have what amounts to be a 10-hour movie.
Right.
You can get more in depth. It's almost like how we always complain about, they'll make a movie out of a book, and you're like, oh man, but they left this out, and everybody's like, well, you can only fit so much in a 2 or 3 hour movie,
right?
But in a 10-hour movie,
exactly,
you could fit a lot.
That's why Game of Thrones was so successful.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, you got this huge story. Imagine if that was only like a 2.5 hour movie. It's like,
right,
you'd have missed so much. But now with those several seasons of that, particular show, you can cover a whole gambit of stuff.
Yeah, you can do a lot more. You can develop characters a lot more. I just think that I think it's the smarter move. I think it's just what they should do. So, but what about you guys? Are you excited for the Kevin Feige movie, first of all? Secondly, what do you think it's going to be about? What time period is it going to be in? We want to know. Comments down below, everybody. We could say that now because we're actually on video. Oh, I should mention that. So for a while, we were doing my Eric Vansel Media YouTube page. Well, we're starting a head-to-head, Star Wars podcast YouTube page, and that's probably where this thing's going to end up. Obviously, just click the link and, you'll be able to see it. But we're going to try to get our YouTube page going and have it to where it only has this content, and then that way we could do other things. We could do video book reviews. We can do stuff that's in addition to our weekly podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast YouTube channel. All right. What do we got next?
All right. So look, we were talking about like Rey and how we kind of were wondering how powerful she's going to be in episode 9. So it kind of made me think about Luke. Like, how powerful was he really, like, in Return of the Jedi? Like, comparatively speaking to maybe other Jedi Masters that we may have run across or just regular Jedi. Like, how powerful do you think, or what range do you think he was in Return of the Jedi?
I don't know. It's tough to say because that was one of my biggest complaints that I've had about Rey so far is the fact that now I honestly think we're going to get the answer in episode 9. I think the Rise of Skywalker is basically going to definitively answer this is why Rey was so popular. Or not popular, but powerful. And that's good because she's picked up the Force and everything even faster than Luke has. And he's a grandson of the Force. So he was obviously really powerful because you saw the difference.
Yeah, between
just in the first scene that we see him, and he's even exhibiting a little bit of a dark side flavor. He's got the black robe. He comes in, he starts force choking Gamorrean guards.
But he's extremely confident, and that's
extremely confident.
Yeah, as opposed to Empire Strikes Back, where he's still kind of. He gets it, but he's still trying to,
Yeah, it's almost like he
figure
doesn't.
it out.
Right. Like he doesn't quite have it yet.
Yeah, he just doesn't have it. Yeah. But the thing is, like Yoda told him, he's like, well, I feel the Force. He's like, yeah, but you can't control it.
Right.
And that's the thing is that in Return of the Jedi, he seems to have pretty much complete control over the situation.
Absolutely.
So I think my guess is that he's probably...
What, are you going to try to compare him to another Jedi Master or something?
Yeah, I want to say maybe Episode 3 Obi-Wan or maybe even Qui-Gon.
I could see that. I would say Episode 3 Obi-Wan would probably be the closest.
Yeah.
Even though, I don't know, it's really tough to say, though. Because Episode 3 Obi-Wan, by then he was basically just becoming a Jedi Master. I don't think Luke was there yet. Now, granted, Obi-Wan goes to fight Dooku, and again, basically just gets pretty much incapacitated within the first, 3 or 4 minutes of the fight. True. So, yeah, I guess I could hang with that.
Or maybe Attack of the Clones, Obi-Wan.
Could be.
Yeah. Or maybe I would go with that one. Maybe Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones Obi-Wan might be... Because actually Obi-Wan's a lot more powerful. like I said, in the battles with Dooku, it made it seem a little bit like he was less powerful, but Obi-Wan actually was pretty powerful in the Force.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you got to also think about it, looking at Dooku's history, Dooku's been a master way longer than Obi-Wan at the time. Like you said, Obi-Wan just became a master at that point. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not comparing his knowledge of the Force to Dooku's. Obviously, Dooku's like way more powerful. But, I'm just saying that I think sometimes the movies did somewhat of a disservice to Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Because
there were certain points of the movie, I think, that made him seem a little bit less powerful than he really is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, because when you compare it to a lot of the books, and I'm talking about the new canon stuff, I'm not really talking about anything from Legends or anything like that. I mean, if you look at new canon books, comics, things like that, Obi-Wan really is a lot more powerful than I think a lot of people think.
Yeah, it's just that he's more passive in his approach to things.
Because here's the thing, even though you can make the argument of new canon versus Legends Luke, Luke is still extremely powerful, post Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Than he was even in Return of the Jedi. I mean, it's one of those things where with Return of the Jedi, you have to look at the fact that if he did just master a few things, he only just learned it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things where it's kind of like, I guess, once you get past an apprenticeship or something in your career, okay, now you're like the real deal, but you're still kind of early in that career. You guys know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you basically...
Like you just got your driver's license.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like you got your permit already. All right, you mastered that. You just got your license.
Or maybe a couple years in, because remember, Return of the Jedi takes place, I think, like maybe 2 years or something. I don't actually remember the timeline. Yeah, but it was something where it was only like 1, 2, 3 years tops.
You got to wonder, like, could Return of the Jedi Luke actually lift the X-wing out the swamp?
Return of the Jedi Luke?
Yeah. Like, was he powerful enough, or did he have that much control like Yoda did?
Probably. I mean, I think so.
I always kind of wish they actually kind of did something that kind of like showed something to that effect. Like, okay, when y'all saw me in Empire Strikes Back, I couldn't do this, but now, yeah, I got this.
Hey, he could have proved it to us in The Last Jedi when the X-Wing was in the water then, but...
Well, he proved it to us when he...
I don't know about you, but I actually got chills when I saw his X-Wing.
Oh, he's talking about in the water?
Yeah, The Last Jedi, because it kind of connected...
Yeah, that's
There's
right.
like certain things to the old Luke that we all knew and loved. And when I saw his X-Wing for the first time...
And the fact that it was kind of buried underwater, it did have reminiscence of Empire.
Yeah.
And I thought he was actually going to like resurrect it in that movie and then fly to wherever, to Crate. That's what it was.
I think a lot of us thought that.
Yeah, well, Ryan had other plans.
No different than in Force Awakens when the lightsaber goes flying and everybody thought it was going to be Luke that would reach out and... that still would have been cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what about you guys? How powerful do you think Luke was in Return of the Jedi? Let us know at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can reach us. You can talk to us. You can submit topics, whatever you guys want to talk about. But how powerful do you think Luke was? I'm thinking, I'm gonna actually hang with that. Episode 2, Obi-Wan.
That's a comparison.
I think that would be good, or maybe even between 2 and 3.
Okay, that's fair.
So what do we got?
Well, apparently this is like an episode. Well, this is an Empire Strikes Back kind of heavy episode. Because
I'm fine with that.
I mean, yeah, me too. It's my favorite one. But so there's a new comic that's being released that's actually going to chronicle what's happened actually at the end of Empire Strikes Back after Luke's hand is basically amputated by Vader, and that kind of period in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and kind of like what was going on in the galaxy is that at that point between Vader and looking for Luke and dealing with everything like that. So what do you think about that comic?
I'm actually really excited about it because I think that that's that's a time period that really needs to be explored.
Definitely.
We have gotten so much stuff from between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's a lot of things between 3 and 4 that I do think we still need to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But the time period between Empire and Return of the Jedi, which is another thing I would like to really see happen, and that sounds like that's what's happening with this comic book series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of picks up like right on Cloud City when Vader tells Luke that he's his father.
Okay.
And he amputates his hand, and then I think it's actually going to show like what happened to the hand and the lightsaber and how it ended up with
I'm wondering if, the whole Maz thing, like how did she end up with the lightsaber?
I think those questions are going to be answered in that particular comic, and just kind of some of the things that, maybe even some of Luke's training. And that
personally think
I would love to see that.
Well, that would be amazing. But I actually also think that we're going to find out in The Rise of Skywalker that we're going to see Maz is going to be the one to repair the lightsaber. Because I actually think that what they're going to do, you know how they're using unused footage for Carrie Fisher?
Right.
Remember that scene in the trailer when somebody's handing her the lightsaber?
Yeah.
I think that's going to end up being Maz.
Ah. Okay.
I think they're going to like retrofit that to be...
Okay.
Kind of like Maz handing her the lightsaber. Okay, it's been repaired, and then Leia will then give it to Rey, presumably.
Yeah, because Rey's definitely wielding it. Cool.
But I mean, I think that a new comic to explain what happens after Empire Strikes Back, because, everybody just goes, okay, Lando and Chewie are off. They're going to go rescue Han. I think that because it was tied up neatly, even though it didn't go right from Empire to Return of the Jedi in the same way that we go from Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, I think that the story was tied up neatly enough that people don't necessarily, I think, require that much explanation. But I personally think there's a lot.
Well, yeah,
because first of all, if you remember, Lando's on Tatooine. Well, how did he get there? How did they, what was that whole plan?
Well, yeah, like who came up with that whole plan? But even on the Imperial side of things, like I want to know, like, okay, Vader made this whole promise to the Emperor, like he would join us or die, but he didn't kill him, and he knows he didn't kill him because, of course, he's talking to him through the Force, while he's on the Falcon. So how does Vader go back and explain that to the Emperor? Like,
well, he didn't exactly put like some sort of a time limit on that now.
Okay.
He's saying he'll join us or die. That's like an eventual thing. This is like a multi-part episode here.
But you would think like, okay, the Emperor was already kind of freaked out. Like, okay, he cannot become a Jedi. He could destroy us. And so he was like, well, if he could be turned. So it's kind of like, okay, you let this guy off the hook. And you lopped off his hand. Okay, yay. I guess you get half credit. But it's like, what if he comes back? Look at you. Like, half your body was burned to death, but, you're still like the most powerful Sith Lord.
I almost want to see a Robot Chicken episode on this now.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would really love to see how, like, the Emperor, like, dealt with Vader about this. Like, okay, did you kill him? And Vader's like, no.
I agree. Because anytime in the comics, which, by the way, I don't remember the timeline of this, but there is a new Vader series coming again. They actually announced a bunch of comics that are coming out, and they all sound really fascinating. Even with Dr. Aphra, it's like they're gonna tie a lot of different things together, especially where Rise of Skywalker comes in. So I think that there's a lot of exciting new things coming in the comic book world, not the least of which is a new Vader series. And that kind of ties into this comic because I, too, would love more Vader-Emperor interaction.
Yeah, because, like, what's their plan? How are they coming up with everything?
Yeah, well, and it's kind of like you said. I mean, you do make a really good point. I mean, when he comes back, I'm sure the Emperor's like, okay, cool. Where's Luke,
Yep. Did he kill him or did he join us? And it's like, well, obviously you're still around, so he's probably thinking, all right, you probably killed him. But, it's kind of like, not exactly.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting.
Because, the Emperor was known for, like, punishing Vader, too. Like, he would do stuff to him, man.
Oh, yeah.
So you just got to wonder, like, what the heck happened?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. And that's why I think that there's a lot of things that they can explore, either through TV or comics or whatever. Because, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that they could explore in the comics. Because I think that's the best. Because unlike the novels, you actually do get some visuals. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, obviously, I would love an animated series on a lot of this stuff. But,
awesome.
You know, that may or may not happen. Well, yeah. You know, a Disney Plus series, who knows? Like the Vader stuff could be... Yeah. Depends on how many seasons it goes, but again, I think that what we're going to end up with is probably mostly comic book stuff.
And if they did, either because you brought up the fact that they're going to do a Vader, or they're in talks basically doing the Vader series.
That's a rumor.
So the best 2 points, honestly, would be either between basically like right after Revenge of the Sith, leading up to Rogue One.
Yeah, honestly, that's the best.
The second one would be between Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that because there's a lot of Vader, you know.
That's when he's really
Emperor interaction. Yeah, he's really
heavy,
firmly in command of the Empire, and they don't have Luke yet. Mm-hmm. And you know, of course, they hatched that whole plan with the second Death Star and everything like that. Exactly. But I mean, I would also like to see some more things in that post Return of the Jedi. Especially, like, that's why I'm so excited about The Mandalorian, because The Mandalorian actually is right after Return of the Jedi, and if I'm not mistaken, in canon, it's the first thing. I mean, I guess the Aftermath trilogy technically does it. Mm. And again, that's why that was so exciting. But I mean, I think the first time we're ever going to see anything is The Mandalorian.
Yeah, you just know that, you know, after Return of the Jedi, of course, there's no Vader. So,
yeah.
You know, so you've got to cover him either between Empire and Return of the Jedi. Right. Or right after Sith, Revenge of the Sith, leading up to maybe like Rogue One.
Or maybe after Rise of Skywalker, maybe Vader makes his return.
That is true.
Well, what about you guys? What do you think? You think this whole post-Empire Strikes Back comic book thing is a good idea? Would you really rather see more Revenge of the Sith stuff? You know, let us know at head-to-head-SW, or of course in the comments below on this YouTube video. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates. All right, so this week, we have the matchup between Exar Kun and Darth Bane. Now,
that was actually...
submitted by Patrick, I believe.
Yeah, I think Patrick, hopefully you're watching. I know you're listening. Yeah, Patrick McIntosh, sometimes, you know, we'll get into these Facebook discussions about things.
Spirited debates, yes.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, most of the time, they're really discussions. Mm-hmm. You know, and he and CJ Moore always have this weird habit of, like, going, hey, man, did you hear this? And there's a lot of times where I haven't. I mean, those guys have actually become, like, one of my biggest sources of Star Wars news. You know, so it's always good to have listeners or viewers like that because... you know, you never know. But yeah, sometimes they also submit topic ideas or anything like that. And Patrick wanted us to do a Duel of the Fates on Darth Bane versus Exar Kun.
Right. So I'm guessing like who will win in a battle or who's our favorite or who's... I don't know.
Probably who would win in a battle, but that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. You know, I mean... you got Darth Bane, who is basically the creator of the Rule of Two, and you know, he's like pretty much sort of like the father of the modern Sith era, I guess. But Exar Kun, though, he was just like ultra powerful. Now, I admit that probably a lot of you guys may not know that much. You might have heard a lot about Darth Bane, but Exar Kun, you know, some of you guys might be like, I don't know. But I know a lot of everybody out there basically does know a lot about these guys because one of our other listeners pointed out, actually, it was a YouTube. Mm-hmm. You know, some of the people were actually listening to our podcast while it was still audio only, but on YouTube. And they pointed out that, you know, we had talked about Darth Plagueis and, you know, how there was like books that Plagueis wrote and, you know, Palpatine has them. And I think I mentioned that in one of the podcasts or whatever. And somebody called me out, was like, yeah, are you sure that's in canon now, though? You know, and I started thinking about it, and then I did some research on it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? That may not have made it over into canon.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, at least to answer Pat's question, I'm going to go... Oh,
you mean the actual topic?
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with Bane.
I'm going to go with Exar Kun.
We actually get the duel today.
Well, yeah, a little bit. You know, and I'll admit, it's been a minute since I've read anything on Exar Kun. I think he actually made it into canon. I'm not 100% sure. Want to make that clear. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he did. But if you look at all the stuff that was written about him, I mean, you also have to remember that in one of the now Legends books, actually, I think it was the Timothy Zahn trilogy. Could be Dark Force Rising. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. I know you will. But basically, Exar Kun ended up inhabiting in spirit form the Yavin Temple, where they had the old Rebel base, as we see in A New Hope and also Rogue One. So he ended up like haunting it, because remember, in Legends, that's where Luke decided to rebuild his Jedi Temple.
Right.
Was in the old Yavin base, and so he ended up like haunting Luke and actually
trying to drive Luke mad, basically.
Yeah, he was trying to drive him crazy, but also inhabit him, and he got pretty far. And I forgot exactly what Luke did to defeat him or whatever, but you know, you're talking about a guy on the Sith side of things now that actually figured out how to be in spirit form. And remember, this is like 1,000 years or something after Exar Kun existed, maybe longer. That's pretty powerful.
True.
Now, I would have to see, first of all, like I said, I think he made it into new canon. If he hasn't, I would actually have to look at some more stats and everything, but offhand, I got to go with Exar Kun.
Well, I mean, I know, like, Bane was very strong in the Force. Not saying that Exar Kun wasn't, but I know, like, Bane was very merciless. Like, he would just mow down people, man. It was just like nobody's business. He had very, very powerful Force lightning. He was always kind of using his telekinesis in the Force. Just his Force prowess, man. Just his knowledge of the Force was just ridiculous. It was like off the charts type stuff, man. And I just think that, he was just very,
you know, we're going up against Exar Kun, though, right? I mean,
well, I mean, yeah.
You know, I'm just saying.
I mean, I know it got, you know, he's doing his little Casper the Friendly Ghost thing. I mean, I get it, but you know, but I'm not saying that XR is no slouch, though, you know, because he's pretty powerful as well. Obviously, if he's can, you know, transfer his spirit into a whole building and he's haunting people and trying to possess people's bodies like he's Chucky or something. So, yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting when you go back and you study a lot of these like older Sith Lords, guys that like say from Darth Bane back, right?
Because there's a lot of these guys. I mean, I'll read these Q&A things on Quora all the time, and you know, people will ask like, "Oh, is Palpatine the most powerful?" and all this other stuff, and then of course, invariably, they'll bring up all these. Like this whole list of Sith Lords that I completely forget. Well, I mean, even beyond that, because that's, of course, in the Knights of the Old Republic game, but at least you have like a game or some sort of a medium that you can hold on to with that. These guys that are listed, I'm like, how do you even know? See, that's like that whole nother fandom level that,
that we're just not there yet.
That we're just not there yet. I mean, as much as I try to be, it's like, man, how do you guys know about this stuff?
Yeah.
You know, and it's fascinating to read because, you know, then I'll just read through this list or whatever and go, oh, wow, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I got to check this person out. Yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know.
I mean, I could see what you're saying, though.
Because to me, it seems like this. Like, in some ways, like, everybody gets progressively better. Like, because, you know, you look at somebody like, okay.
My phone's still me. I got to look. I got to look up Exar Kun.
Like, you got to look at somebody like, okay, like, take Yoda, for example. Like, okay, everybody kind of knew Yoda to be like this whole super powerful, like, Jedi master and grandmaster.
Yeah.
But then eventually Luke eclipses him, you know, to a degree.
Well, but I think it.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking like, if you look at Exar Kun, okay, then Bane, okay, then you still have, Palpatine that comes, or Sidious, and that, if you going by Sith names.
I forgot about this.
What?
So he was a Jedi Knight who fell to the dark side, assumed the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, and waged a destructive war against the Galactic Republic and Jedi Order during the era of the old Sith Wars.
Oh, Exar Kun?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And apparently he is still Legends.
Okay.
But yeah, he was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think that in some ways, especially with Bane kind of revamping the whole Sith thing and coming up with the whole Rule of Two, and so I think he just kind of perfected, what was already kind of created.
Well, the other problem too, see, there was actually in Legends, Bane. There are some novels that featured in him and stuff like that, and I mean, he is definitely new canon. Mm-hmm. Like they did bring him over. I don't think that they've written any books about him in new canon yet, but I do know that he is definitely has been canonized. Mm-hmm. And yes, without question, Darth Bane is ultra powerful. It's really difficult a lot of times, I think, to really intelligently discuss like who's more powerful in some of these different things, because it's like there's like different sources written about them, and what you have to do is you have to kind of go, okay,
you have to sift through them.
Yeah, there's this like whole section of books, and then there's this, and then you have to try to compile all the information because it's not just in one source, right? And then you have to try to go, okay, well, I think that this guy might actually be more powerful than this guy. Mm-hmm. And again, for me, I'm just basically going by, like what I remember. And
sometimes it's just like a football game, quite frankly. It says whoever shows up good that Sunday. You know what I mean? I think it's like, you can get two guys and it's like, they're both super powerful. It's like Palpatine and Yoda. It's like, all right, you got the best of the best and the best of the worst. And so who wins? It's like them, and it's, I think whoever just brings their A game that Sunday wins. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of how it boils down.
No, you're probably right on that. What about you guys? Anybody that maybe has even more extensive knowledge about these guys? Who do you think would really win in a battle? Darth Bane, Exar Kun? Let us know at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Actually, I wouldn't mind some pictures on Instagram. I love the way, like, Exar Kun just looks kind of menacing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but let us know in the comments below. All right.
So next, we have From a Certain Point of View.
Yeah, now for those of you guys who don't know, From a Certain Point of View is our feature topic. This is usually like the title of the show. This is what we're discussing. So what do we got?
So this week we're talking about mysteries of the Force, and what controls it. So
yeah, we've actually talked about, we've had a lot of really Force-centric discussions over the last, 4 or 5 podcasts. It seems to come up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I just really think that, when you start talking about the will of the Force, of course, there's this whole thing about the wills and they control the Force. And, they're like this other
Well,
beings,
was more like Lucas's, like that's where he was going to go if he had done 7, 8, and 9. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's a little bit strange, is that you really don't know. It's kind of like you could take that concept, because so far Disney hasn't, in any of their movies or any of their, books, comics, animated series, to my knowledge anyway, they haven't done anything to negate that theory. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like, who do you listen to? Because Lucas is the author of all. He was the creator of this whole thing.
Right.
My thing is, what happens when his concept differs, even though it already has, in the sense of like his movies would have been different.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like something like The Force. So far, Disney has actually gone along with pretty much everything that he said or set up in his films. But I'm wondering like where they're going to take this, because if you look at the end of The Last Jedi, it seems like they're almost back to the whole, it's, there's almost none of this midi-chlorian crap. You actually have this thing to where, it's a force that binds us, and it's in all living things and everything, and anybody can master it, and that's what we got Broom Kid at the end of Last Jedi.
Right.
But now with the rise of Skywalker, I wonder if they're going to keep going with that thread, or, is it going to be something a little different?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of also one of those things, too, where you have to ask yourself the question, like, okay, you have light and you have dark. And it's like, okay, well, what determines that? It's like, is someone automatically just destined to be dark, or is it just more so of a choice? Because they always talking about, the quick and easy path leads to the dark side. But it's kind of like, well, if there's always got to be something in balance, you have to have a light and a dark. So it's almost kind of like, well, you don't even get to choose. It's like the Force chooses.
Yeah, somebody has to be dark.
Yeah, exactly. It's like somebody has to be dark. And then, you look at even the midichlorian thing. I mean, I get it. They were trying to do too much of a scientific explanation of it. But it's like when you stop and think about it, kind of makes sense in a way, because if you're saying like, okay, well, the Force is in everyone. It surrounds everybody. But some people are more sensitive to it, I guess. Well, what determines that? And then it's like, okay, we always got into the debate about like, okay, you look at somebody like Anakin Skywalker, he was born of the Force. But then, okay, most of his body was, he lost a lot of tissue, either from being burned or being hacked off. So.
Well, I think that's where the midi-chlorian thing would start to fall apart, because if you don't have a lot of the cells, now granted, just because you lose all that, you still retain your DNA, you still have all that. So if the midi-chlorians are kind of like that, then you'd be okay.
Right. And so then you're always asking the questions like, okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Like when we're talking about Rey and how powerful she is, it's like, well, what determines that? Because it's kind of like, is it necessarily your ancestry? Does it automatically just means I could see it, you being, or you having the Force sensitivity, but that doesn't mean you're naturally going to be stronger in it. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
That's almost like saying like, because you're Arnold Schwarzenegger's kid, you're predisposed to be a bodybuilder or that strong. Right. And it's just like, well, that was just, no.
You'll have some of those genetics, but you still have to go and develop that. I mean, Schwarzenegger himself had the genetics, but he had to
hone it.
Really, go through this whole grueling, program and diet and all this stuff in order to actually become what he became. So, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like everybody, just because you're the kid of somebody else doesn't mean like, Michael Jordan's kid is not the next Michael Jordan or Richard Pryor's son. We saw him try to get out there and do comedy.
Well, but I mean, if you're talking about Rey in particular, though, there's also the theory out there that she's a clone and she was made from the DNA or whatever from, Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, a little dash of Palpatine or whatever.
And paprika. And
yeah, it's kind of like.
We don't have the recipe, but.
And that would explain her power.
It would explain why she has the Force, but once again, this is like.
Well, I mean, it's yeah. I see what you're saying. It's kind of like,
it's like you just have there's genetics that's going to say like, okay, because your mom and dad are tall, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be tall. So you have that trait, but that doesn't make you a great basketball player. You know what I'm saying? Just because your dad was one.
But then again, though, it's kind of like, okay, Luke did make the comment, the Force is strong in my family, my father had it, I have it, now you have it. And
right. That genetic thing that we have it, yes.
But it's kind of like when you look at everybody, if the son of Skywalker were to live or whatever, he would be, and again, I get it. You're probably saying, okay, the potential is there, but that doesn't mean that he's going to fulfill it. But it does mean that if he trains, because look, if you take, okay, Michael Jordan's son, if he goes and he actually trained and did the same thing as his dad, conceivably, genetically, he's got the speed and, a lot of the same skills. If he develops them like his dad did, then you can make that argument.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea is, okay, if Luke goes in there and trains and does everything, which he did,
right,
and he was powerful, actually he was more powerful. Plus, let's go back to a couple of podcasts ago when you were talking about the Force.
Why are you bringing up old stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And you have a situation where, what was it that you said? You said, we were talking about, oh man, I might have lost it that quick. But basically,
you don't remember.
You'll not remember this. I mean, it was one of those deals where we were talking about how Luke eclipsed his dad's power, partially because the Force chose him.
Yeah.
And you started talking about how the Force chooses people, whatever. So the Force is its own living thing, too.
Yeah, and that's what I said about the thing, too. And this is probably going to go into your whole dark side thing, right? Like, is the Force going to choose somebody to be dark? Yeah, because it's kind of like, somebody has to be. This is actually
kind of an interesting philosophical discussion because...
See, that's why I kind of
now I see where you're going with this. Yeah, because, you had this whole thing to where, okay, the Force is actually made up of light and dark.
Right.
Now I'm catching up. It's going to be interesting because you remember in the Clone Wars when they had
that whole the father and
the
son and
daughter and
yep.
all that, and
exactly.
It makes me wonder if any of this is going to play into it, because, and this is why I said in the beginning of this discussion why I think that Disney is going to start messing around a little bit with the Force, because Lucas was definitely on a set path when he wrote that in the Clone Wars. He was definitely thinking of something. Like he was definitely going to go somewhere with it, I think, had he held on to the property.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure he gave all his notes and all that to
Filoni and all them.
Yeah, and everybody at Lucasfilm and Disney, of course, but there were certain ideas that Disney liked and said, cool, we're going to go with this. And there's a lot of stuff they rejected, which is why Lucas felt betrayed and everything else. So it makes me wonder, though, if the nature of the Force, what it is, and all that is going to change, because I think I was even reading something where it was talking about, there's going to be some major changes. Like the Force isn't going to be what you thought or something. I think it was either JJ or somebody brought this up.
Yeah.
In some recent interview that they're going to start to mess with the Force now. Yeah,
because, even you look at it from the standpoint of like, okay, inanimate objects. It's like, okay, so in The Last Jedi, Luke was like, the tree. Like, okay, this tree apparently was strong with the light side of the Force. But, also in Empire, that cave was filled with the dark side. And it's just like, okay, now to your Exar Kun thing, that makes sense if like some spirit of the Force or a dark side user inhabited this particular facility, like Exar Kun decides to, okay, I'm about to invade the base of Yavin 4.
Yeah, it's like Lando. I'm the administrator of this facility.
Right. And so, okay, like he's haunting that place. So yeah, it's going to be filled and be rich with the dark side presence of that.
And you bring up a good point too, because it's like the cave
right
in Empire, or that, I guess it's another cave on Ahch-To.
Yeah, that tree. Yeah, that.
It's like, what made the dark side decide to go there?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Now I think in the case of the cave on Dagobah, I think they actually explain that in some. Actually, I think it was recent. I do remember. I don't think it was that though, because I actually did read that whole comic where Snoke took Kylo.
I was just about to say, yeah.
But there was it was kind of cool though what he did, because he kind of turned around. You remember when Luke was like, or Yoda was like, your weapons, you will not need them. And
only what you take with you.
Yeah, only what you take with you. It's like, well, what am I going to find down there? He's like, only what you take with you. When Kylo basically asked the question of Snoke, it was kind of like only what makes you weak or something. You know, so it was almost like, yeah, take a weapon and go down there and, you know, fight basically your light side demons or something.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting because in that comic, they sort of reinforced it a little bit. But I remember there was some other canon source where they were talking about why that particular cave on Dagobah actually became inhabited with the dark side.
Yeah.
And it's obviously there's like little pockets of areas, I guess.
And yeah, I get why Yoda was there, why he was near there, because one, he wanted to mask his presence.
Yeah, he masked his presence
around the dark side, even though that place was full of life anyway, so he could tap into pretty much light or dark, I'm assuming, if he wanted to. But of course, he's trying to, you know, change the tide in the Force, you know, from his end on Dagobah, because it's full of life, where there's trees, the animals, and everything running around there. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. But at the same time, you know, his spirit or his Force essence probably would have been amplified and been easily noticed by the Emperor. So that's why he kind of stayed close to the cave. So kind of become like kind of throw off the scent a little bit, if you will.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, if we're talking about what gives you your Force potential, or, yeah, I get the fact that, okay, if you train in anything, you'll become good at it. You know, I mean, it's no different than
then it becomes a discussion of, is the Force something that's innately within you that develops within you, or is it a skill?
Right. And
See,
is
it's
it
a
both?
living force. Well, and I think the answer would be both.
Yeah, it's probably
honestly, because you know, I mean, the Force represents the potential that you have. So if you're strong in the Force, as they say, that means you have a lot of potential in the Force. The Force is in you, it's within you, it can work with you. If you cultivate that, then you can actually tap into it. If you don't, then maybe you're missing out on a lot of your potential. Yeah,
because like even like looking at little Anakin, you know, with the power races, it's like, okay, he was able to do stuff, but he didn't know that's what was happening.
Right. He was kind of tapping into the Force without really realizing it.
Yeah.
Well, and Luke did the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, when he used to blast womp rats in his T-16 back home, right?
Right.
But, I mean, you want to look at a really good example of it, look at Leia. Now, Leia, for a long time, didn't really, you know, train or anything like that as a Jedi or any of the Force. She has some Force ability, obviously, because she's related, but and then even then, she didn't train to, like, she didn't seem to train a lot in the whole combat elements of it.
Right.
You know, she used it more for
instincts of
like political type of things and
yeah,
stuff like that. And she probably obviously trained in certain areas, but it would be interesting actually to see, like, to have it laid out for us.
Yeah, I would love to see. Now, see, that's something I would love to see a trilogy on. Like,
Leia actually training?
No, just the Force period, just kind of like the beginnings of it, or like how.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's getting to the point now where they have to start explaining it more. And I can't help but think that maybe in The Rise of Skywalker, you're going to see a lot more, just by the nature of everything that's going on. You're going to see things that it's like, okay, what's actually going on here? Now, as far as the Force, it's like what, because there's the part that you actually take and train and develop, and then there's the raw potential and the power that the Force is already there. So it's like, which is it really? And then from there you have to go, okay, you had the light side, you had the dark side. It's obviously faster to do the dark side. It's obviously less destructive for yourself to do the light side. And then you got what role does the Force actually like push you one way or the other? Is it kind of like, okay, I'm light and I'm dark, go ahead and make a choice? Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, these are the nerdy discussions that a lot of people are afraid to have. Well, yeah, it's kind of, and the way, honestly, I look at it for those who, you know, are of the Christian faith, like, I look at it from the standpoint of, like, these are the questions I had as a kid. It's like, all right, if God knows
everything that you're going to do, and he knows what you're destined to be, but he still has given you freedom of choice. Like, okay, so how does he, how does that really work? Because it's like either he's going to allow me to make these decisions on my own and just do whatever.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference in that, though, because you had the whole like sin problem and you got to fix that. And it's like, okay, this is what I'm giving you. Pretty much everybody's falling short. Nobody could be perfect.
Right.
This is what's going to happen to you unless you follow me, kind of a thing. The Force is a little bit different because you don't necessarily, it's not like a whole universal issue. And this is actually what makes it more complex to me, because you have a lot of people who are not Force users at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you decide to tap into the Force, it's kind of like, and this is where it gets a little bit crazy to me, is if Disney obviously is going for this whole idea that they introduced in The Last Jedi, to where you have one side gets a little bit too much and it's out of balance, and now you have to have the other side to balance it out.
Mm-hmm.
But yet at the same time, the dark side actually destroys the user.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a shelf life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, then...
And it's like nothing can be too good for too long, so... it's like,
that would be the other side.
The opposite
is that
side,
eventually, if the light side were fine,
that's what happened in Phantom Menace, because it was just like, okay, for a long period of time, there was no Sith, at least that they were aware of. They said,
but then that also goes into something else you brought up in a couple of podcasts ago too, where we were talking about how, okay, the Rise of Skywalker is definitely going to see the end of the Jedi and Sith. At least that's what JJ has said.
Right.
He might be lying to us for all we know, but but the thing is, we've talked about the fact that Force users go beyond just the Jedi or Sith. Those are like one...
That's like Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
Like there's other parties.
But there's other parties, exactly. And it's kind of like there are Force users outside of those particular dogmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what about those guys?
Right.
Are they going to still be around? Because obviously you're not eliminating the Force, you're just eliminating the Jedi and Sith.
Right.
Well, that said, let's say you eliminate the Jedi and Sith. Okay. Now, is the Force going to try to use these other outside guys as like balancing it out?
Well, I think that's where like the whole and the gray Jedi thing kind of comes into play.
I was just about to bring those guys up, because that seems to be what they want to try to do, is like talk about the gray is the best or something. Yeah,
because it's the mix of good and evil, or I guess light and dark. I want to say good and evil, because that dark doesn't necessarily mean
that was
evil.
Another thing I was going to say too, is that there's a lot of dark side guys that aren't necessarily. I'm trying to think of an example. Unfortunately, I can't. But I do remember. I don't know if they brought this up in New Canon. That's my phrase for the day, by the way. I don't know if they brought this up in New Canon or not. Even though, like I said, I've read a number of the books, but there's so many comics and everything that they could have brought this up. But it makes me wonder if, like, in the whole gray Jedi deal, which I know is now definitely new canon, they were talking about the idea that there would be like this balance in it, because you'd have like good and evil, like they're, I guess, neutral.
Yeah.
But man, what was it?
Well, I mean, like even in
second time today, I just lost my train of thought, everybody.
Well, it's like even in Rebels, like when we saw the Bendu.
Yeah, the Bendu.
And that was kind of like, and Ahsoka, she eventually kind of walked that path of basically being a gray Jedi, because she basically like, well, okay, I'm not a Jedi, but I'm not a Sith Lordy, but I'm a Force user. And it's kind of like you walk a path and you make choices based upon the situation. Sometimes you may do some dark things doesn't necessarily make you evil. And I think that's just one of the things, like if you go too far into the dark side, yes, you become evil.
Well, and that's where I think the self-destruction starts.
Yeah, because it's like, fear leads to anger, it leads to something else. So if you don't have enough self-control over yourself, I think that's the danger.
Sure,
of being
because look
in the
at how
dark.
Mace Windu actually incorporates some of the dark side into to his stuff.
Exactly.
It's something to tap into. But what about you guys? What do you think? What determines the power? What about all this light side, dark side? Anything that you guys want to talk about or whatever, put it in the comments below. We'd love to talk to you guys about it. All right. Well, now it's time for one of my favorite segments that I get to do on video. And it's something we just call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where we answer your questions that you submit to us. What do we got first?
All right. The first question comes from Priya Mahoney. And the question is, I think Lando's role in the upcoming movie is to help Leia bring other planets together to help the First Order. What do you think?
Yeah, that actually sounds reasonable to me.
That makes a lot of sense.
The whole time that I was thinking about this, because I've been trying to think about Lando's role in this, because there's so many characters that they got to deal with.
Right.
And especially if they're going to go through this whole thing where they're going to tie all the trilogies together. And, it's kind of like you don't want to bring Billy D. Williams back and then waste his character, like an overblown cameo or something.
Right.
But it's like, what role could he possibly play in this? Because I honestly think this is going to be the Kylo and Rey story.
Definitely.
They're going to be the focus. Palpatine, obviously, is going to be a pretty heavy focus in this, too. And I'm sure so will Luke, because it's going to be a really Jedi Sith type of thing. I think that Finn, as interesting as he is, I think he's going to have more of a supporting role. Same thing with Poe and everybody else. So that said, you bring back Lando. What are you going to do with Lando? And I think that that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be that Lando's going to be a unifying force that comes in and maybe brings in either other planets or other factions or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I agree, because he's part of that old guard. You know what I'm saying? So he's kind of like...
And he's a rebel hero.
Yeah, he's a rebel hero. He's from that old guard. He knows kind of like, hey, look, this is not something you want to mess around with. And if you remember, like at the end of Last Jedi, Leia put that call out and she was upset that like nobody showed up.
Nobody came to the party, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Because everybody was kind of like in fear of the First Order.
I actually thought that was a brilliant story move.
I did too. And
because when you really stop and think, it's like all that they've done, for the galaxy and everything, and Leia being so well known, and nobody's answering her call. It's like, man,
it's like, okay,
what are they even doing this for? And it's,
and she's like, I'm trying to, do this one more time.
Now, granted, you do have to stop and think about this. The entire New Republic just got blown up in just like one shot. They might be busy dealing with that.
Not only that, but everybody's freaked out. I mean, because you can, it's one thing, okay, you blow up Alderaan, but like you're blowing up like all these different, simultaneously. It's not like, it all happened kind of like at one time. And then now, they got these other ships, was it the Juggernaut, or I think that's what it was called? The Dreadnought.
The Dreadnought.
Yes. Yeah, the one that, they had, and they lost so many ships to that thing. So it was just kind of like, a lot of planets are in fear, and there's not a huge.
Yeah, what? And that's something I never really thought about. But yeah, I mean, after you see this kind of power, a lot of times they might feel hopeless and they might not necessarily be ready to answer that call.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to fight with? Like, we don't have, depending on who's left, we may not have much.
Get broom, kid, man. Let's do this.
Right. So I think Lando that would be a good place for him, especially with his charm, his way to sway people. I think Leia could definitely use that to her advantage.
Oh yeah.
And, she could help, or he can help her kind of like rally the troops and he'll even, lead the charge one more time, like we kind of saw in the trailer. Mm-hmm. Seemed like he was like ready and back in action type thing. So I think that's a very plausible.
I think that's a very plausible and probable use of Lando in this movie.
Definitely.
All right. What do we got next?
Next, we have a question from Dantes Franklin. He said, they said that the cracks in Kylo's helmet would glow red whenever he gets angry. I think this is kind of cheesy. What say you?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cheesy.
So basically what they've been talking about, and it's funny, it's been a lot of talk about Kylo's helmet being repaired, and that's kind of like this quiet underlying thing, because in The Last Jedi, Kylo destroyed his helmet in that fit of rage in the elevator after he left Snoke, and then of course Rey's lightsaber, aka Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, was destroyed. But we see them both being repaired in the trailers for The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I have heard that you saw that little creature with the furry hand or whatever that was kind of like soldering or welding together that helmet for Kylo, and I guess whatever material he was using in there is kind of like when Kylo really gets angry, it kind of like glows, I guess. I don't know if it's always going to stay that way.
It's kind of like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer kind of thing. I mean, it's like
Kylo the Red-Nosed Sith Lord.
I get it, but I can't imagine that they would go in that. I can't imagine JJ would go in that direction.
Well, I mean, I think he's always, they're always trying to do something different.
Well, because I agree with Dantes. That would be extremely cheesy if they went that route. I mean, it's not a deal. Like, it wouldn't destroy my enjoyment of the movie. It would probably be one of those things that I would look at as cheesy. Now, I will say that at the same time, I do not think that the explanation that they gave about the kyber crystals was cheesy. Mm. There's some people that thought that was cheesy, but I actually thought that made sense. Mm. Where, for those of you guys that don't know, they were saying that pretty much the kyber crystal will change colors based on, it's almost like a Jedi mood ring, basically. And the reason why Sith Lords have a red lightsaber is because, these things are actually living, and it basically senses the anger and all this stuff, and it essentially like bleeds or something. Mm-hmm. And that's why it turns red. Now, there's a lot of people that thought that that was cheesy, admittedly, but I actually think that that's a good explanation, even though the other explanation that had existed long before then was just, hey, you ended up with a blue kyber crystal, then you get a blue blade. Mm-hmm. And that Sith, for some reason, prefer red blades.
Yeah, red is about passion.
Yeah, but I did think that it was a nice touch that the color of the blade basically is resembling the mindset, I guess, of the wielder. Mm-hmm. Okay. This, though, that he's using some basically mood ring version of crazy glue. I don't know, man. I don't know if that would take me out of the movie or not, that every time he gets mad, his helmet would glow.
Right. It's like a little nightlight.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Good luck trying to hide from somebody. You have to stay calm the whole time, because then everybody know who you are.
And we know that's not Kylo.
Yeah, exactly. He's always angry.
Well, thanks, guys, for, submitting those questions. I hope that you guys enjoyed our first, video version of Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. We're still getting used to actually being on video and being seen. We're getting there.
Definitely.
So you know what? But just don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when we have a new episode coming up. For those of you guys who are listening on our podcast, make sure you hit us at Head to Head SW Podcast, or actually at Head to Head SW on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also subscribe to it. Subscribe to our podcast. We're available everywhere on iTunes. Actually now it's just Apple Podcasts, but we're even on Twitch now, believe it or not. So we're on Spotify. We're pretty much everywhere. We look forward to hearing from you guys and, letting us know what you guys think of the podcast. and any ideas that you have. It's going to do it for our show today. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.